What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily Podcast, Baseball Edition, powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. It is a Victory Thursday. Great week for Canes baseball. Probably the best two games of the season so far. We are here with Mr. Perfect himself, Javi Salas. We're going to break it all down. But first, a word for some of the best friends that Canes baseball has.
This episode of the CanesInsight podcast is brought to you by our friends at Sala Astorita & Cox, a boutique law firm focusing on securities regulatory matters, broker-dealer and investment advisor regulation, white-collar criminal defense, complex commercial litigation, and securities arbitration and litigation. The firm aggressively represents clients throughout the nation. Contact them now at 561-989-9080. or visit them online at salalaw.com.
All right, so finally, something really good to talk about. We've had wins here and there, but a string of emotional victories like this, maybe since the last Clemson game with the Scanlon walk-off. That's the last time I felt this good about what's happening. So, Javi, talk to me. Two big wins.
Massive, D. I mean, again, we were at this point last week. I said the one thing, if you're playing Miami in the ACC tournament, right, you don't want to fight the crazy guy. You don't want to play the team that has nothing to lose, and here we are, right? You mentioned it perfectly. The best two-game stretch probably of the season doesn't necessarily make us forget how difficult this season has been, but the last two baseball games, today and on Tuesday have just been spectacular. Really great performances from a team that was sort of limping its way into the ACC tournament. Just a fantastic all-around effort, all the ranges of emotions, man, from elation on Tuesday, Daniel Cuvet with the two huge home runs. Today, get out to a big lead, early lead. Clemson starts clawing back, and Miami just is able to hang on with that play we just saw. Edgardo Villegas with an incredible grab in left field to rob extra bases from Clemson. So, 11 o'clock games. I bet you the ACC is very, very happy that they had those two slated for those 11 o'clock games. The hour they probably wanted to push the teams that weren't necessarily in the mix ended up being some of the better games of the tournament.
Absolutely. And, there's a lot of ways we can go with it. A lot of big plays. You mentioned Villegas going up there like Spud Webb, jumping up. But I want to talk about really the two best players on the team, two guys who just really represent what you want Canes baseball to be. Obviously, a picture there of Miles Cava, who we got to talk about him because he's been a big player lately. But I want to talk about Daniel Cuvet, really on Tuesday, what he did, and then Gage Ziehl today. Let's start with Cuvet. With the monster game on Tuesday, tying Pat Burrell's home run record. And then also, even today, some of the defense that he showed, still swinging the bat well, had a big RBI, but, the stretch at third, had some nice throws showing off the arm. What have you seen from Cuvet on these big-time stages here?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a theme of the season, right? There's games that Miami plays where they have the best player on the field, and it's extremely evident, right? Like Daniel Cuvet on Tuesday against Louisville was by far and away the best player on the field. And not to discredit and take away from Louisville, they do have some great talent on that roster, but 2-3 run home runs from a guy who is basically the only force in the lineup. Miami has sort of wedged itself, due to some injuries in a position where everybody knows, and I keep saying it, he's circled on every single scouting report. It's just shocking to me that people are still pitching to him. Like I said it in some group chats. I said it to some of my buddies. I said it to my brother too. I was like, if I'm Dan McDonald, the head coach of Louisville, I'm going to call in my pitching coach after the game and be like, dude, what are we thinking? Like, okay, he got us in the first inning, whatever. But then late in the game, when you have a chance, the game is in the balance. Why are you pitching to this guy? And, the last couple of weeks, we've seen him get walked more and more, but his season arc, the story of his season after those struggles we talked about when he was hitting 340 are so far gone. There is no reason to ever bring that up ever again. This guy's the real deal. He's the goods. We're in a group chat where someone said, I think it might have been you. It was Cam Ward and Daniel Cuvet, right? The two guys on campus that are, superstar athletes that are really putting the university on their backs. And it's a great run. I mean, look, Pat Burrell, you say the name Pat Burrell in college baseball circles. One of the all-time legends of the game, had a tremendous major league career. To be in the same sentence with him is a tremendous accomplishment in and of itself. To do it in a lineup where, again, there's not a whole lot of protection. He lost two big bats. Daniel Cuvet is everything you could want in a player, in an ambassador for this university. And then the unsung things, right? He plays a tremendous third base. Today he has an incredible grab on a bunt attempt. JD Urso, runners on first and second, no outs. Urso fields a hard bunt, makes a throw over to third base, which was not a great throw. Cuvet leans over, catches it in foul territory, keeps his foot on the bag. So you're watching the highlights, but to see the ins and outs of the game, to see how good he is on a day-to-day basis, and again, to do it with this massive target on his back. And look, I don't know Daniel Cuvet, but he seems like a humble kid. He seems like he really cares about this university. And, the sky's the limit. This is a freshman, man. This is an 18-year-old. This is a kid who we don't even know if he's hit his ceiling yet. And, we're talking about 23 home runs, 70-plus RBIs, 8 RBIs in this tournament alone. So just a tremendous, tremendous 2 days for him. And again, best player on the field Tuesday against Louisville, best player on the field today against Clemson.
Yeah, but you see him running the bases there. I think his base running has kind of been underrated this year.
Yeah.
Just in terms of, I didn't know he was that fast, and he seems like he knows what he's doing out there on the base pass. In a year where base running has been kind of tough for the Canes.
Yeah, look, and that's a great play right there, right? You get to third base with less than 2 outs. The opportunity, there was an opportunity for him to perhaps score on the next play. Dorian Gonzalez hits a deep fly ball. They end up holding, Cuvet at third base, but it's just the little things, right? Like, he's such a good baseball player. He has such a high baseball IQ. And I think, more than anything, the effort starts to manifest itself, right? You see the big home runs, but it's these kinds of plays, taking the extra base, being the aggressor, playing good defense, understanding the fundamentals of the game, and being a resource, right? I think more than anything, this guy just injects a ton of confidence into the guys around him. And people start elevating their game because Daniel Cuvet has taken his game to another level, a level that we haven't seen at the University of Miami in a long time.
Yeah, and look, we know the offense has issues beyond the injuries. It's not like people on the boards are going to say, don't, you're making injury excuses, not making injury excuses. We've been very vocal about some of the issues beyond the injuries, but Cuvet's doing this with no Blake Sear, no Jason Torres, and now no Jack Scanlon, who really, to me, is probably of those guys, he's the next one up as far as guys that are having good seasons at the plate. So not a lot of protection for Cuvet. It makes, like you've been saying all year, why are you pitching to this guy? That question gets bigger every single game, it seems like.
Yeah, look, I've been high on Cuvet since day one. I've said that this is a player that is only scratching the surface of his ability. I think he needed that struggle in the middle of the season. He needed to undergo some, a correction a little bit and sort of a reflectionary period. And I said that the point that I loved about Cuvet's season was his answer in the middle of his struggles. He starts to figure it out. He talks about the adjustments. He talks about, the work he put in and day out to sort of get out of that mini slump. Such a mature response because he knows that it's a long season. And granted, it was a tough year. It was a tough stretch for the Hurricanes during that period where he was struggling, and he's just turned it around. And again, he's doing it on the biggest stage. This is a desperate Miami team. They're a couple outs away today from not being able to strap it up again for the rest of the season, right? So every game matters in a tough season. This is a big, wind in the sails for the entire program. And look, you got a puncher's chance, right? That's all you wanted. That's all you could have asked for. And here we are.
Switching to the other really star of this team, which is Gage Ziehl, gave another quality start to the Canes today. Wasn't as dominant as we've seen in the past, but again, gave his team a chance to win, which they did. Hearing Clemson's coach talk about him, you could tell they had a lot of respect for him. They thought they were doing good to get 3 and 6 innings off of him because of what he did to them last time. I believe that was his 13th strikeout game was against Clemson the last time he faced them. So really the consistency that you see from Gage Ziehl. And at the post-game interview, when he's talking about how much he loves the program, he says, no one wants to play us, pumping up the freshmen. You look at these games from a pitcher's eye. What would it be like to play with a guy like a Gage Ziehl?
Yeah, look, and I admire Gage so much because, again, these are really tough, outings for him. He's had to be perfect the entire season. I think Devin Travis said on the telecast today, he's had 14 starts, 10 of them being quality starts, right? So if you're JD Arteaga, you're Laz Gutierrez, you pencil in Gage's name in that lineup, you have a really good chance of winning the game, right? And, Gage has not had a whole lot of run support. The team's been, on the losing end of a lot of his starts, and not to any fault of his own, but he's had to go out and grind. And I think he's one of those guys that as a starting pitcher, it's a sort of a mentality where you're not playing against anybody. You're kind of pitching against yourself, right? And he understands that. He knows that he's got to be perfect. And there was a point in the game today where I thought the umpire was kind of squeezing him. He was visibly frustrated with the zone. Miami had scored some runs. They were up. He does a tremendous job of, those a great mound visit by Coach Gutierrez. He goes out there, calms him down, leaves the catcher at the plate. That's when you know it's one of those visits where it's like, hey, dude, take a breath. You're our guy. We're not taking you out. The situation is a situation. The umpire's zone sucks. We all know that. Like, just keep making pitches, keep grinding. Gage is a guy you can tell that enjoys the grind. He loves the battle, loves being in the fight. He fought his way to get an extra inning there. I mean, when his pitch count was over 100 pitches, goes out there, has a 1-2-3 inning in the 6th. So and you touched on his post-game presser, right? He says he loves university. He just wanted one more chance to pitch and play with his teammates. So this is the kind of guy you want to build your program around. I mean, I am a huge Gage Ziehl fan. Again, these outings are so difficult when you have to be absolutely perfect every single time out. Just speaks to the type of person he is, the competitor he is. And at the end of the day, look, Cuvet gives a ton of life and confidence to the offense. Gage Ziehl does the same thing for that defense, right? When he's out there, there's a sense of ease, there's a sense of calm. People know that, Gage is going to go out there and give it his best shot. Today, 100, 105, 106 plus pitches. He looked great in the 6th inning. I thought they might have sent him back out for the 7th just because how easy his 6th inning was. Granted, it's summer, it's hot. He was sweating, had some difficult innings, but he gets stronger as the game goes on, and he's been just a tremendous pitcher for the University of Miami. If I'm JD, I say, hey, Gage, that door is wide open. You want to come back next year? I know you're going to have a really great professional career. He's going to get drafted. He's going to do wonderful things. At some organizations are going to get really lucky to have Gage. But if he wants to come back, if he loves the University of Miami, that door will be wide open. He'll have that locker will stay just as he has it right now.
And look, that was a hot topic in the group chats, not the 6th inning, which you're talking about, the 5th inning, as far as he was getting hit pretty hard. Yeah. And there were some people saying, pull him. He was already getting close to that 90 pitch mark. Obviously goes out there, and we know it was the right decision in terms of how it turned out. Talk about that decision to send Gage back out there for the 6th when he had a tough 5th inning.
Yeah, look, and I think it's one of those things where, and I've been fortunate to be in some of those conversations where, you do get hit, and that's just the nature of the game, right? Gage had faced this lineup 2 times. They'd seen him. He'd thrown a complete game a couple weeks earlier, probably 6 or 7 weeks earlier against his same lineup, right? So he's not fooling anybody with his stuff anymore. It's an absolute grind. And to your point about what the Clemson head coach said about him, right? Eric Bakich talked about how he's such a competitor. He was such a bulldog, and they really had to squeeze these runs out. He thought they were doing well, 3 runs in 6 innings, right? So he went into that dugout after the 5th inning. Granted, it was the most difficult inning of the game for him. Goes in there, lobbies for one more inning, and then you reward your coach, right? You understand that, hey, he gave me the opportunity to get out here. I got to take care of my business, and he did just that. And obviously it's one of those situations where Miami doesn't necessarily have the arms, D, to really compete with, you're not going to go bullpen to bullpen with the Canes right now, especially where they're at in terms of health, available arms, and just in a tight game when your season's on the line. Like, I think JD and Laz rolled the dice and said, I'm going to go with Gage at 100 pitches, and I think that's better than my next option, right? So it worked out in this situation. I think that they'll probably do that 9 out of 10 times, 10 out of 10 times if they had the opportunity to. I mean, that's the guy who got you here. That's the guy you want to sort of ride until you can't anymore. And I think if this team was going to go down, it was going to be with Gage Ziehl at the mound. And he rewarded the staff with a tremendous 6th inning. And, the rest is sort of history for his afternoon.
One thing with these tournaments, and we talked about this a little bit off air, just watching other teams, really the top teams, kind of seeing what they have and comparing them to the Miami Hurricanes. One thing that jumped out to me in this game, really both games, even Louisville as well, is, speed and athleticism. I thought Louisville has, or Clemson in particular, had some guys that can really, really run and hit. They weren't just one or the other. They're top hitters on their team. That center fielder, I mean, they had guys that could really go and also, could hit. Is that something that you think should be a focus for the Canes going forward, or are you more concerned about just getting guys that could mash and not so much worried about the athleticism and the speed part of it?
Well, I think you have to take it all into account, right? I think as you see, the athleticism has sort of shifted in at the professional level, right? So I think you want to sort of mirror what's going on at the professional level. You look at a guy like Ohtani, right? Obviously the best player in baseball, but his athletic profile, he is a guy that mashes, tied for the league lead in home runs, but he's also a guy who legs out triples, right? I think he led the league in triples last year, right? So there's a level of athleticism that I think you want to sort of throw darts at, and that's the type of player you want to circle. And the game has changed in a way that everybody's stronger, everybody's faster. You're seeing more athletic bodies. Miami is not necessarily going to steal a whole lot of bases this year. They didn't take the extra base a whole lot. We saw a lot of base running blunders, whether it be because of lack of speed or, a lot of different factors. But to your point, Clemson and Louisville have a lot of athletic bodies on that roster. And, that's sort of what you want your roster to look like going forward. And Eric Bakich did a tremendous job turning Clemson around, right? He came in, immediately went into the portal. A lot of his guys were, from that, he was at Michigan prior, had a lot of inroads in the central part of the country, attacked that zone of the country for some of his high school commits, did really well in the portal this year. I think their third baseman was a Radford. He played at Radford last year. But again, you just want to stack your roster with as many athletic bodies as possible. I think that's something Miami will look to do in this offseason going into next year. Again, you just want to get as many athletic people, especially at the corners, the outfield, right up the middle of the defense, shortstop, second base, catcher. That's really where you want to be your most athletic and have your best athletes.
Yeah, just looking at Louisville, I thought up the middle, they were really, really impressive. Their center fielder, their shortstop, and then the catcher, who I know is DH for us or for Louisville against us on Tuesday. Yeah. But man, a big difference between watching that kid and Perez today. I think that again, I'm just watching this with clean eyes. I haven't watched a ton of these teams, the other ACC teams, aside from when they're playing Miami. But man, I gotta say that there were some impressive athletes on the field for both of those teams, and Miami had a couple themselves. And switching gears to the bullpen, we've talked so much about Nick Robert and Nick Robert stabilizing the bullpen, which he did, and having a tough task as a true freshman, putting a lot on his shoulders, which he's handled. But it seems like the roles have kind of reversed, and now you're seeing Miles Caba be that guy to really get us out of trouble here in the late innings.
Yeah, look, Caba's been tremendous. The last month of the season, it's been the Miles Caba show, right? He's been our best arm out of the bullpen. He's been the most reliable, and what he's been able to do is give length, a tremendous amount of length. On Tuesday, he goes 3+ innings, 60 pitches against Louisville. I thought there was no chance that Caba pitched today. JD said before the game that it would be in a really, really important situation if Miami had the lead, and sure enough, Nick Robert gets into some trouble in the 8th inning, no outs, and you bring in Miles Caba and does a tremendous job to get out of that jam. And then in the 9th inning, gives up a homer, finds his way into some trouble, and then, obviously a tremendous play by Villegas. But, you have to commend a guy like Caba, coming off a tough injury, missed last season, was sort of finding his way through the early part of this year, didn't really have a role, was pitching in the middle relief area, but now he's sort of solidified himself as the stopper of this Hurricanes ball club. And I don't think we necessarily have a closer, because there's not one guy who's been pitching the 9th inning outside of maybe, Walters, who's, been on the shelf the last couple of weeks here. Miles Caba's been, hey, there's a fire, put it out, and then figure out how to get the next, 6 or 7 outs for us. And he's been tremendous. And, we saw the celebration today, hitting the Clemson dugout with the John Cena after that last out. Look, man, I commend guys like that, because he's had to fight his ass off to get a role on this team, solidify a role on this team. He's had to just battle to get back from injury, man. So you have to imagine this is just, cherry on top of all his hard work and how much he's grinded. We're watching that John Cena right there. We had the Mutombo and Cena dual celebration, man. Those are, we got to get Josh White to put those on some shirts for us. But look, you're seeing the jubilation, the elation of this team, right? I mean, it's a team that knows that their season is as good as their next day's starting pitcher, man. There's really not a whole lot they can rely on. They don't have a regional. They're not going to be penciled into any regionals. The only way they solidify their spot is by winning, the semifinal, and then they got to win the final. So, Miles Caba is kind of like the underdog story that everyone, didn't know they needed this week.
I was going to ask you if you ever did any of those celebrations. Where, like, I saw the perfect game celebration, we're just pumped up. But you ever hit them with any of these like kind of choreographed specific?
Man, I wish I had thought of something like that, or was in the moment enough to like understand how. I mean, look, the stadium was pretty empty, so there was a lot of chirping going on. If you were tuned in, the dugout mics, they were hot. They were catching a lot of back and forth between the two teams. I mean, it was an 11 o'clock game on a Thursday in Charlotte, so I can't imagine that. The banker hours don't necessarily work for that. But, it was one of those games where, like I said, the ACC tournament doesn't necessarily lend itself to being the best, viewership experience. Now we have a Clemson-Louisville game that's essentially meaningless, right? They're playing, they know they're not going to advance. They have to play a game that's simply a formality. But But then you have teams like Miami, which are fighting and clawing for their postseason lives. And, you run into this team on a Tuesday afternoon at 11 o'clock and on a Wednesday and a Thursday afternoon at 11 o'clock. It's the last thing you want to play is a desperate team in an empty ballpark. It's hot as hell, and Miami has nothing to lose, right? So, just awesome stuff. Really, really cool win today for the Canes.
Yeah, it's like you talked about, nothing to lose. Just from the outside looking in, a guy like Jimenez with the home run today, he seems looser. He seems so nervous every time we saw him during the season. And then here hitting this crucial home run, he seems, again, I don't want to be a body language expert, but it looked different. Even just everything before the swing. I'm talking about that. Forget the result. He just looks more confident out there. Maybe just like you said, nothing to lose.
Yeah, look, and I think I was talking to somebody yesterday who said that one of the things he looks for as a scout is, aggressiveness in their swings, right? He doesn't like to see passive takes, or not necessarily going up to the plate to, hit with bad intentions. And I think we've seen Antonio Jimenez have his fair share of struggles, both offensively and defensively. That's such a cool at bat for him. I mean, he gets an 88-mile-an-hour lollipop fastball out over the plate, and then he takes a hack at it. And that's exactly what you want to see. I mean, imagine this guy's the ninth batter on a team that you look behind him on the scoreboard and hitting under 200 as a pitcher. You got to think, I'm going to groove a fastball in here. It's probably going to be one of those at bats where, I can sort of navigate, get an easy out, and sure, he pops one out to right field. So it goes to show this guy has tremendous power opposite field. He's aggressive when, he's given the opportunity, when he feels confident enough to do it. So I'm really happy for that kid. That was a really cool moment. I mean, you saw him running around the bases, yelling and screaming. And, that's kind of the Miami fire and passion that we haven't necessarily seen the last couple of weeks. It's sort of coming out here at this ACC tournament. And again, it's a lot to do with the confidence that you get from a guy like Daniel Cuvet. He sort of opens things up for you, that, first inning of the first game of the ACC tournament where, again, if they lose against Louisville, the season's over, right? And he hits a 3-run bomb. Everyone's sort of at ease. You're playing ahead. Guys like Antonio Jimenez, look, I want to do that too. You know what I mean? Like he wants to show that he can do that. And awesome moment, really, really cool stuff, and made some good defensive plays too today. I mean, he was very important piece of today's win.
Looking forward now, Duke, NC State. One of those is going to be Miami's opponent on Saturday. Miami has had trouble once you get past Ziehl, Schlesinger. I mean, really to get past Ziehl, but certainly with the third starter and the midweek guys, how do you approach that game on Saturday from a starting pitching standpoint?
Well, look, I'll say this. Miami has had, for playing the 11 o'clock games, on Tuesday and Thursday, it has set up nicely for them in the sense that they've had days off between all of their games. So they had a day off after Louisville yesterday, able to get Miles Caba some much needed rest. He's able to bounce back and pitch on Thursday. They'll get Friday off, won't play until Saturday afternoon against NC State or Duke. So another day off tomorrow to sort of get your arms, as much rest as they possibly can. And granted, Miles Caba's been the workhorse here, so it's kind of like, Miles, you need the day off, dude. Don't even touch a baseball. Don't even go to practice, man. They put him in a bubble, whatever he needs to do to get him back for Saturday afternoon. And then again, on Saturday, it's kind of a whole staff situation. I imagine you get some sort of combination of Herrick Hernandez and Chris Diaz on the mound. I expect them to probably piggyback that, maybe try and get 5 and 6 innings out of those two. And anything you get over that is a gravy. So look, we're going to need Nick Robert to bounce back. He's going to have to give us some length on Saturday. And then again, this is the kind of situation where Miami didn't have to necessarily plan for a Saturday game because there was no tomorrow if they lose today. So they had to blow it out, throw your best guys, whoever was available. It's kind of like a hockey mentality, man. If you kind of got your teeth attached and you can skate and get on the ice, you're kind of going out there. So look, I fully expect if the game is close on Saturday, Miles Caba will be in the game somehow in some capacity. And then, depending on how Rafe Schlesinger bounces back, I could see a world where if Miami does win on Saturday, he might be able to bounce back and pitch on Sunday. I don't necessarily know what they do otherwise because, like you mentioned, there's not a whole lot of starting pitching depth. But let's not worry about Sunday. Got to take care of business on Saturday. And look, ACC, we talk about the North Carolina bias. Duke, NC State. Duke won't have the crowd that NC State will. If NC State wins that game, I said it in a couple group chats, that stadium will be painted red. They will come out. The Wolfpack fans will come out in full force. They've been a very hot team as of late. They're in the national seed conversation, talking about a top 8 team with the ability to host if they really put a good showing here in the ACC tournament. So a lot to play for, obviously, for the Canes. But at this point, they've won their pool. They got absolutely nothing to lose at this point. They're going to see another combination of a lot of guys coming out, playing fearlessly, playing really aggressively. And again, who's going to be the pitching coach that doesn't pitch to Daniel Cuvet, right? Is it going to be in the semifinal where they finally realize, like, we are not going to let that guy beat us? Remains to be seen. But look, as a fan, as a former player, I really do appreciate the effort that these guys have put forth the last 2 games. I really commend the staff. I commend, the guys in that locker room, because as the 11th seed in an ACC tournament, this is the reason why you play for, to get in, right? Obviously, it's been a tough year. Everyone in that locker room will tell you, everyone associated with the team will tell you it's been a really tough year, under 500, obviously. But, you get these 2 moments of joy and elation where you can tell yourself, hey, we have a chance. It's not like we don't have a chance. We got into the tournament. We have just as good of a chance as the 2 seed Clemson, and they went out and showed it today. So we'll keep a close eye on Duke and NC State. Like I mentioned, if NC State wins that game, oh boy, there's going to be scenes in Charlotte with Wolfpack fans on a Labor Day weekend. Memorial Day weekend. I'm sure those fans will come lathered up, and it'll be a great atmosphere. So the Canes are in an enviable position. They get to rest up and sort of see how the rest of the tournament shakes out.
Well, look, I hope they don't stop pitching to Cuvet and give him a chance to break that record. That'd be great to see. And look, I was already planning for next Monday or next Tuesday, whenever we do it, the podcast, to be a season wrap-up. Hopefully we were talking about more baseball, and it's in the cards. It's still alive. We're here on Thursday getting into Friday, so still alive, still a chance that we're talking about baseball on next week's show. So, Javi, man, appreciate you joining us, and go Canes.
Thanks, D. Go Canes.